All right, good morning and welcome to our next webinar. Today we're going to be talking about what's new with the latest release of the 7.1 suites. And although this is titled ITMS, we're really going to talk about the solutions that are included with CMS, SMS, and ITMS. First things first, my name is Troy Whittaker, and I'm the Endpoint Management Team Lead for ITS Partners. And so on with our presentation. Just very quickly, a little bit about myself. As I mentioned, I'm a team lead for Endpoint Management. I'm also an authorized Symantec consultant, with a specialization in Endpoint Management. And what this means is I really focus on workspace and mobility solutions. This includes the CMS suite, the SMS suite, Symantec's new mobile management suite, which, by the way, 7.1 has just launched as of this week. And we also deal a lot with the virtualization and packaging technologies like WISE. And just a quick bit of information about ITS Partners. We are a national and a platinum partner. We're the currently reigning partner of the year, and I believe we have been so 3 out of the last 5 years. We are the first master specialized partner for Symantec. And really this comes from us focusing exclusively on the endpoint management and security solutions. Just a little bit of logistical info. We're based in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and when you read a lot of our marketing materials or talk to our people, you'll hear a lot about engineer centricity. And what this means is that our engineering group really drives the growth in the direction of our company. And that's a great perspective to take when you're dealing with complex technologies like the Symantec client management and server management suites. So let's talk real quickly about some of the updated requirements. And you'll see that I'm notating this release as 7.1 SP1A. We'll get a little bit into what's actually the latest released and what the nomenclature is now. But the important things I want to point out here is that Windows Server Standard and Enterprise 2008 R2 is going to be your required platform. SP1 is now officially supported and has been for a few months. We do require multi-core processors at least 2.0 gigahertz. Obviously, these requirements are going to grow with scaling. And by no means is this the recommended configuration for any endpoint ecosystem, but they are the bare minimums to get started. Something I always like to point out when you're looking at processors to run these solutions, there's a difference between how AMD and Intel market and identify their products. So something that you need to be careful about with AMD processors is when they advertise the L2 cache, which is an important specification for your processor, they actually advertise it at a per core basis. So when you're looking at an AMD Opteron versus maybe an Intel Xeon processor, the AMD is only going to show maybe 512 kilobytes of cache. Well, that actually means per core. So on a modern Opteron, there's going to be 6 cores on the physical processor die. So that's actually going to be 6 megabytes of L2 cache, which you would compare to an Intel Xeon with 8 megs of onboard cache. So just something important that I think gets missed a lot when people are provisioning resources and something to be aware of. As far as the platform itself, we're going to require IIS, and since we're on 2008 R2, we're going to have IIS 7. We are going to require that you install all components of the II6 compatibility modes, and we're going to need ASP.NET. And we're also going to need Microsoft.NET 3.5 SP1 minimum. Something else I always like to note about our platform requirements, with IIS 7 we have a new .NET application pool configuration. It's called integrated mode. We do require the classic .NET application pool mode, so that does need to be changed on your provisioned resources. So let's talk a little bit about the releases that have come out in that timeline. So in March of this current year, Symantec launched ITMS 7.1 general availability. This includes obviously the CMS and SMS suites, as well as some other complementary solutions. So we've had general availability as of March. In May, Symantec delivered the first maintenance release, which was Service Pack 1. This brought a lot of bug fixes, a few enhancements to usability and some solution features, but mainly it was aimed at fixing issues that shipped with the general availability release. Now, most recently in August of this year, they have shipped SP1A and SP1B. And I'll get into that detail here in a moment, but that's the release level that we're looking at currently. You'll notice that the frequency has been regular and they've been delivered on time, so this is a great sign from Symantec that they're committed to shipping those maintenance releases and supporting the product. So you may be asking yourself, which version are we at now? It is confusing, so I think I've laid it out as simply as we can get it here. So 7.1 GA is general availability, and that was the initial release of the 7.1 suites. Service Pack 1 was the first maintenance release, and now we're at really some sub-levels of those. So we have 7.1 SP1A, which actually included Patch Management 7.1 SP1. So that was the core piece that was updated and brought the suite releases up to the SP1A level. And then most recently, Deployment Solution was updated to SP1A Maintenance Release 1, which now brings the full suite level to 7.1 SP1B. So when you're looking for documentation or issues lists, you're going to want to be looking at both SP1A and SP1B release notes, and I'll be giving you some links to those specific documentation pieces later in the presentation. Let's talk a little bit here about the core suite features. With 7.1, we now have IT Analytics integrated with your suite purchase. That's going to bring you very powerful reporting. And when I say powerful reporting, I talk about the concept that IT Analytics offloads impact from your Symantec CMDB to the SQL reporting server and allows you, if you have implemented some sort of regular processing, that you can actually run reporting against SQL reporting services and lessen the impact on your CMDB that's performing other day-to-day management operations. Parallel to that, we have integrated workflow with your suites now, and that really brings you unparalleled process management. And the idea here is that we ship out of the box with some integrated workflow. I will say that in many environments, a more sophisticated install is going to have to be performed. You'll probably want to put workflow off box with its own SQL instance. But out of the box, it is going to ship integrated and running on the same Symantec management platform as your notification server. So there are a lot of built-in templates and processes already in there. Those of you that are looking at workflow, we strongly, strongly recommend investing in development and workflow because it's really going to be the glue that ties together all of the other Symantec solutions, and I like to call it putting up a curtain that brings ease of use in front of the complexity behind. Also with 7.1, we now have integrated deployment. This means the legacy DS is no longer separate. We don't have a separate database. Everything is in a single configuration management database. We have a single platform and a single management console. This greatly simplifies your provisioning and deployment operations because you're able to leverage resources that you developed in other integrated solutions like software packages or inventory information or tasks and jobs that have been built in your Symantec Management Console can now be leveraged directly in deployment without having to port those to the legacy DS component. I also want to take a minute here to mention the enhanced console views. This is probably more commonly known as the Activity Center, but it's what we generally refer to as a single pane of glass management portal. And this allows you to access and manage computer resources, all of your jobs and tasks, manage your software, your licensing, metering, and tracking, as well as a single view of all of your policies that apply to any of your resources. And along with that, software and license management has been made significantly easier in the latest releases of 7.1. If you have any experience in dealing with asset and software licensing, you're familiar with the multiple operations that are required to account for and meter and track the license utilization. That's all now been consolidated in the enhanced console view under software management, and once you get a look at that and you're able to use it, you understand that it's become a much more simplified process. The time to delivery of a software package and being able to track it accurately has been cut by, I would say, at least 75% with the latest releases. So I want to talk about some things to know, and these are really just some general points about the platform and the state we are at with the latest release, and things that I want customers to know as they start to engage in maybe a proof of concept or a pre-production environment, or as you're engaging with a partner. These are things you want to keep in mind. First and foremost, although in most environments we will install to a different path, let's say a D drive or an E drive, maybe it's some mapped SAN space that you have on a virtual server, I do want to point out that your event queues by default are always going to install to the system drive. So this means if your system drive is on the C volume, It's going to go into the hidden program data folder, and there's a folder structure in there for Symantec SMP event queues. But you need to realize that you're going to be consuming a small amount of space as you submit up NSEs and NSIs, and those are going to go onto that system drive and not onto the drive to which the product's been installed. It is possible to relocate the event queue path, and there is a KV article up on SimWise about that. And you're also free, of course, always engage a partner to talk about maybe some customizations or workarounds for these things. Something else I like to talk about up front also is IT Analytics has additional requirements. So when you install a suite like CMS or SMS, you're going to get IT Analytics out of the box. However, that configuration is going to require some additional pieces that you may not know about being a traditional Altiris customer. First and foremost, we're going to need SQL analysis services and reporting services installed somewhere. This can be on the same instance where your CMDB is hosted, where the database engine is, or it can be off-box on another resource, or in the case of like a pre-production or a proof of concept environment, you can go ahead and put analysis and reporting right on the SMP server. But obviously, we don't recommend that for production environments. There are additional Symantec Management Platform components that must be configured and installed. For those of you that may already have a test environment up and you've installed a 7.1 suite, if you look at Settings, Notification Server, IT Analytics, you'll find basically 4 steps in there, starting with configuration that you need to perform in order to get the data into the IT Analytics views. Just a side note there, if it's a test environment or pre-production, your default CMDB, whether that's off or on box, is already going to be connected. So you don't need to worry about connecting to SQL at that point, but there are some of those back-end setup processes that need to be done. So our recommendation is you always want to have a SQL expert on hand when you're configuring IT Analytics, whether that's an in-house person or a partner you might engage. And finally, with IT Analytics, I do want to point out that cube manipulation, or being able to create views within cubes in IT Analytics, does require some Office web components that get installed in the browser. These are not required on your Symantec Management Platform or your notification server, but they are required on any workstation where you may manipulate cubes. When you do go to view a cube in the platform, you'll be provided a link right there if the Office web components aren't installed, and you can install them directly. Okay, so something else I'd like to mention too about the latest release, out-of-band management, if that's something you'll be leveraging with the Client Management Suite, that does require mixed mode authentication for your SQL database. So that's something you always want to know up front and provide to your DBAs because there can be policy restrictions or maybe institutional policies that affect that. So we do like to mention that up front. Make sure that you can do mixed mode on your SQL if you're going to use out-of-band. The other thing I like to mention about that is out-of-band also requires an additional database on the same instance as your Symantec CMDB for the platform. And what it's going to do is take the name of your Symantec CMDB and it's going to append _ Intel AMT to the end of it. And that's where all of our Intel system configuration data is going to be stored. A few more things to know. I like to talk about site server configuration. When we install a notification server, through SIM, we have a bunch of readiness checks and configuration choices that make sure that IIS is configured the way we need it to be. We don't get that with a site server deployment. So if you've ever done this in a test or a proof of concept environment and you're not able to get task services to work with a site server, it's probably because you haven't changed your application pool. So in the IIS 6 configuration on that site server, you need to make sure that your application pool, your default application pool, is changed from integrated mode back to classic.NET mode. Additionally with that, you're going to need IIS 7 and the 6 compatibility mode for both task and with package services. If you want that IIS code base, you're going to need that installed as well. So as a matter of fact, when you go to deploy a site server, if you don't have IIS installed, it won't allow you to deploy task anyways. But keep these things in mind after you've pushed out your Symantec Management agents and you want to deploy some site servers. You need to meet these prerequisites, and the application pool needs to be changed manually because of this, you're not using SIM to deploy a site server. Another thing that I like to let customers know is we want to be mindful of upgrade paths. If you're migrating from an existing version of one of the suites or solutions, because we offer 64-bit everywhere now, if you have existing Symantec Management agents, you can upgrade from 32-bit to 32-bit. You can upgrade from 32-bit to 64-bit, or from 64-bit to 64-bit. So this is going to vary from environment to environment, but it is something you need to account for in your design and in any production installs that you'll implement. And something else I want to note, this is a really common question for my customers, is how do I know if I really got a 64-bit agent now? I still see 32-bit processes. Well, the truth is that there are still 32-bit plugins, even with the 64-bit management agent. You're still gaining the improved performance and I/O operation with the 64-bit process, but certain things like inventory, for example, will still be launched by a surrogate process, and they'll run in a 32-bit context and be emulated. So just something to be aware of when you're testing the solutions or you're troubleshooting a rollout, is that you're still going to have 32-bit processes that run even on a 64-bit host. Documentation is an important thing to be able to get. We all, I think, deal with the SimWise or the Altiris KB on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes it can be difficult to find things, but I'll talk to you a little bit today about how we can make that easier. But first and foremost, there is a single knowledge base article that covers all of the IT Management Suite 7.1 SP1 documentation, and then this includes every release of every solution within ITMS. It's at the URL there. And keep in mind, please, that we do publish these slides, so you don't have to scurry to write these URLs down. We'll send that out to you. So each section on that page is going to have a release note for each individual solution, and you'll be able to get the latest user guides and admin guides there. I want to talk briefly here about some important fixed issues. I'm going to dive deeper into some of the core solutions next, but just a few highlights here for things that we're not going to cover in detail. The Activity Center, or maybe known as Enhanced Console View, actually has a current hotfix roll-up that is post 7.1 SP1. It solves many of the outstanding issues that customers have been seeing, so that's important to apply to any shipping release that has been implemented. Of course, you always want to review the release notes for CMS and SMS 7.1. Those will be titled SP1A/SP1B, so you'll be able to identify those in the knowledge base when you download them. Deployment now has a myriad of fixes. We've gone through two really point releases now, and I'll cover that in a little bit more detail next. Something else I'd like to mention, there's been a long-standing issue with PC Anywhere solution. If you have endpoints that are commonly accessed remotely by remote desktop protocol, and then you try to start a PC Anywhere session, typically that would generate errors on the endpoint that are end user visible. I am happy to report that the latest shipping release of PC Anywhere solution resolves that, and we're able to share that virtual display driver now. So you can use RDP and PCA interchangeably on your endpoints without impacting your end users. So finding known issues, and I find that this is not common knowledge, but it is important to be able to find the right articles. Of course, you want to go to SimWise. When you get to SimWise, you're going to have the ability to put in some search terms on the left-hand side, and then you can scope that down to a product on the right-hand side. I found it very important to always qualify with versions. So if you're looking for documentation that's related to 7.1 SP1B, go ahead and put that in the search field, and then make sure that you qualify that on that right-hand drop-down box with the appropriate solution. So most of the documentation that you'll find useful is actually under Management Platform. So if you start typing the word Management or Notification Server, that'll pop up. Make sure that you select that as your scoping product, and then go ahead and search from there. So now I want to dive a little deeper into some of our shipping solutions and talk about some of the newest features of those and what we're seeing. So first and foremost here, deployment solution. Latest release version is SP1A, Maintenance Release 1. I'm happy to report that we're almost there. We almost have full feature parity with our DS69 legacy product. So I feel like hopefully towards the end of this year, that all of our customers will be able to move off of legacy DS and be able to fully utilize the integrated deployment solution within the management platform now. Some important enhancements to that product. You can now predefine any computers with only a MAC address. With previous releases of the 7.0 integrated solution, we did have to have several items like the UUID and a subnet and a GUID and the MAC address to predefine. You can now predefine with only a MAC address, just as you used to do in DS6.9. We do support using tokens with system configuration now, so if you want to use a token to name that computer, you can go ahead and do that now within those task types. We also have the ability to deploy ghost partitions now, which is a great new enhancement in the latest shipping release. And also there's been an important bug fix to scripted OS install, or as it's represented in the platform, you'll see install Windows OS. That domain join option did not previously function correctly, and that has now been resolved as well. Something else I like to mention about Deployment Solution is that Deploy Anywhere fully functions out of the box. If you need a simple hardware independent imaging solution, I really feel like Deploy Anywhere is the way to go, and it offers full driver support, even peripherals, to get you up and going with an HAII deployment. A couple of notes here about Deployment Solution. I'm providing a link here to the full release notes for the shipping version. And also another knowledge base article that's available that actually lists several articles for the current deployment solution releases for 7.0, 7.1, and 7.1 SP1. So if you're running any of those versions and you have questions about PXE functionality, the way that the Symantec boot services function, or maybe known issues or common issues that come up, that article on the bottom of this slide is going to point you in the right direction to all of that documentation. Moving on now to another core solution, let's talk about the current shipping release of inventory solution. Windows 7 and 2008 R2 SP1 are now both fully supported for inventory collection. Also Red Hat Enterprise 5.5 and 6 are now supported as well. An important enhancement for those of you that run in hierarchy, inventory policies are now editable down at the child level. So if you want to provide separate inventory policy configuration for different global sites, or maybe in different enterprise organization levels, you can now edit some of those policies and still leverage hierarchy. Another feature I like to point out, the software catalog now ships with 388 predefined software products. This is going to vary from environment to environment, whether you want to be very general or very granular in your definition of software products, but they do ship almost 400 of those out of the box. So those of you in smaller environments and maybe where you don't have a software manager to actually dedicate time to this process, they're going to provide you quite a bit out of the box. It's going to be associated when you bring in your inventory. And again, release notes are available at the following URL. And so just keep in mind that we'll send these slides out and you'll be able to get to these URLs without having to write them down right now. Okay, next up is IT Analytics. Current shipping release is 7.1 SP1. A few enhancements I want to mention here is Patch Management 7.1 SP1 is now supported. So the new Patch Management release, which I'll cover in just a moment, is fully supported in this IT Analytics update. It brings a few really cool things that are going to make reporting easier for you, especially if you in your enterprise have been charged with update compliance, security compliance, reporting, or risk management. We now have a dimension for the software update release date so that you can go in and build reports, views, and cubes based around that data. The existing software update dimension also has two new attributes, whether or not a bulletin's been enabled and whether or not a reboot is required. So all of this really leads to building really sophisticated views within IT Analytics that allow you to get a single glance at your environment and figure out where your vulnerabilities are, what the state of your endpoints are, and really down to the level of if a bulletin's been assigned to a specific resource and whether or not it needs a reboot to apply it. So all of this data is really important in order to get to good compliance, and so these are great features to have in IT Analytics. And again, on this slide, we're providing a link to the release notes so that you can get the full information on this latest update. And moving on again, let's talk about Patch Management 7.1 SP1. So most importantly, this is a total re-engineering of the Patch Management solution. The underlying technology has been completely redone. It's much faster. It works more reliably. The console reporting and the feedback from the interface has been greatly enhanced. So with all this great re-engineering, I do want to, make it known the caveat that this is not a simple upgrade path. If you are currently running Patch Management 7.1, if you move to the SP1 release, it will remove all existing policy and content. So you do need to be aware of this and don't take this decision lightly. It's not a simple upgrade. The reason for this is the underlying processes underneath patch management have been totally replaced. The way that this solution writes to the database has been redone. So it does require sort of a fresh start in that perspective, but the benefits greatly outweigh, I think, the work and the risk required to recreate some of your policies. So just the pure speed of patch management now is a great benefit. The other thing that really makes this worth it is the expanded support for third-party Windows software. So I listed a few here on the page, but I'm going to give you a peek at what those actually are on the next page. The reason I didn't list them all here is it's actually updated quite a bit more rapidly now. As the catalog for third-party software is updated and you perform updates on your notification server, you're going to instantly get access to those new updates, and I'll give you a preview of that on the next slide. Another big announcement here for Patch Management 7.1 SP1 is service packs for Windows are now supported and can be delivered within the Patch Management framework. So this is another great enhancement, allows you to more rapidly bring your endpoints up to compliance and make sure that you're staying at the latest service pack release for your endpoints. And another, I think, long requested and long waited feature is we have a much more simplified distribution process now. With 7.1 SP1, you can do a one-step stage and distribute, so you don't need to go download and then create a distribution policy separately. That can all be done in a single process now. The other important feature that this brings is we can now immediately replicate an update policy, let's say for a zero-day exploit, that can now be replicated immediately through your hierarchy if you're leveraging that feature to make sure that you get that out to your global endpoints right away. Continuing on with Patch Management 7.1 SP1, you'll see here that I've highlighted the interface and some of the new third-party support we have there. So you'll see things like 7-Zip and Foxit. These really aren't huge names in marketing, but they're widely used throughout a lot of enterprise environments, so that's a great thing to have. Again, we have Adobe products covered. We have Apple products covered, so if you're using iTunes, Safari, QuickTime, any of that stuff on the Windows side, we're going to be able to patch that. We have some Citrix applications in there, some HP applications, Google applications like Chrome. Under Mozilla, we can do Firefox, Thunderbird, and SeaMonkey. Some of the applications from Nullsoft, if in your environment you still distribute Winamp, we'll be able to patch that for you. Some of our Oracle components, Real Players, Real VNC if you use that. Some of your BlackBerry components, if you're a BB Enterprise customer, we've got you covered there. Some of the Sun and Oracle Java pieces, Skype, if that's an enterprise application, we can patch it. Of course, WinZip, which a lot of people still use, we can go ahead and patch that for you as well. And just to finish up patch management, the release notes are separate for the Windows and the Mac solutions because those are independent solutions within the suite. So we have links to both of those release note sets. And moving on here to software management solutions. So software management is a core solution for any suite. It really has its fingers into all of the other solutions, but there are some important enhancements we want to make you aware of. One is the emergency policy update feature. So this comes along with the ability to do an emergency patch or software update policy. We can do the same thing now with any managed delivery policy. So if you have, let's say, an enterprise or a line of business application that's not covered by the patch management solution, we can put that into a managed delivery, and now we have the ability to rapidly roll out an update to that application. So if you have a security issue with an in-house app, or you have an important line of business or Salesforce application that you need to get out to your endpoints, the emergency policy update is going to allow you to immediately roll that out regardless of maintenance windows or any other restrictions. Our software portal, this is a great feature. We are now integrated with Active Directory just like the rest of the platform. So if you've been waiting to use that software portal, now is the time. We no longer have to supply any user details. There's no work for your end user to do. When they access that software portal, we're going to go ahead and do a lookup against their Active Directory credential, and we're going to supply all the user information we need. And then finally here with software management solution for a long time now, we have shipped the Workspace Virtualization Agent with the solution. It hasn't been very visible, and it didn't have out-of-the-box policy set up, but we do have that now. So you can deploy it just like any other plugin to the Symantec Management Agent. And a great enhancement here, if you are an existing Workspace Virtualization customer, we can do an upgrade now through our built-in rollout policies. So if you have a previous service pack release of the Workspace Virtualization Agent, we can go ahead and upgrade that for you now. So briefly here, as we're starting to wrap up, I just wanted to mention a few things about migration. This is very important for a lot of our existing customers, as they want to know how to get from one release to the other. And just at a high level here, these are the things I want you to know. If you're coming from 6.5, we need you to upgrade to that latest roll-up. That's going to be R13. And then we're going to use the migration wizard at a base level to get all of your asset data and computer data and policies and everything over to the new 7.1 environment. A little side note here, if you're not comfortable upgrading your production infrastructure, we do have a technique we like to use where we'll take your existing 6.5 CMDB, we'll copy it over to another SQL instance, we'll go ahead and install the latest solution that you're running, and then we'll upgrade this pre-production environment we've just set up and then do our exports from there. So fear not if you're running 6.5 and you're not sure you can afford to implement an upgrade just to migrate. We have lots of workarounds and ideas to handle that. And of course, you can always contact ITS or another qualified partner to talk about these. Now, if you're coming from 7.0, I do want to let you know that a direct database upgrade is the only supported path right now. This means that if you need to get data from 7.0 to a 7.1 release, we need to perform a direct database upgrade. If you're in a situation where you need to start fresh, we do have some workarounds for that. We have a very refined process that we leverage the data connector solution that we can use to move over asset, computer data, software policies, and packages. And we can do that all for you as a qualified partner if you have the need to start fresh. But just keep in mind the officially supported path is a direct database upgrade. So just to wrap up here, let's talk about the bottom line. The state of 7.1 right now, we see that maintenance releases are being delivered on time and as promised. It looks like we're rolling at about a quarterly pace. And we've been very pleased with the progress of both bug fix and enhancement on all of these maintenance releases for 7.1. Symantec has fully documented the database schema for 7.1 that is publicly available from the knowledge base. They have fully documented all solution configuration and notes about best practices. And they have also provided full planning and implementation guides as well as scalability information. So all of this stuff is available for you on the knowledge base, but again, if you need to implement a full enterprise solution, think about engaging a partner to help you work through some scalability issues and make sure that you get the implementation best practices. Another point I want to make is Symantec has really delivered on the QA with this release. I work in these solutions day in and day out as an engineer, so I feel the worst of the pain and I get the best of the benefits. And I really feel like I can say that Symantec has fully delivered on the QA processes that they promised, and that really goes hand in hand with all the documentation and schema docs that they provided. And just a note here, we're very excited about the things we're hearing from Symantec on upcoming releases. We're really looking forward to the next release of deployment solution soon that'll bring us full parity with the the legacy DS69 product. A lot of enhancements around the Mac platform, so those of you that are bringing in Macs to your enterprise environments, we're going to be able to support those in a much better fashion. And of course, mobile management or mobile device management is the hot topic for everyone. We know that Symantec has just shipped, as of this week, the mobile management for 7.1, which is a fully integrated solution, has a lot of great features, and that's something to keep in mind as you look at implementing an enterprise management suite, that we're going to be able to cover all of those types of devices with a shipping product. So that's it for today's webinar. If you do have any questions, please give us a call at 877-ALTIRIS, or you can hit us up at itsdelivers.com. If you're interested in any of our previous videos or webinars, we have a lot of great content out there. That's accessible at vimeo.com/itspartners, or if you're an iTunes user or an iOS device user, you can search for ITS Partners in the podcast directory. So I want to thank you for your time today.